So this is part 2, those who missed part 1. And part 1, we spoke about the idea of birth. And we spoke about the idea of bris milah for a boy. And we spoke about the idea of naming a child. One of the things we say to our children, or to families, is that the baby, this child, should go l'Torah, or l'chuppah, or l'masim tovim. That's one of the things we say when a baby is born. And those words mean your child should go towards Torah, as in they should be learned and connect Jewishly, and they should go to chuppah, they should get married, and at that point, they should do masim tovim, good actions. Many people say, that's a very strange order. Why can't I just say have good actions, learn Torah, get married, right? Or get married, learn Torah, and many different. But the combination is specific, not coincidental. And the idea being that, first of all, we want to educate our children. Then we want them to get married. And only once you're married, you start really doing good deeds in your life. And we're not going to talk about marriage tonight. I'm going to save that beaut for another class, or I'll be torturing you. Teaching you about the ideas of marriage and the reason you get married. Tonight we're going to talk about the Torah part, and specifically Bar and Bat Mitzvah, which has been kidnapped by a lot of people in the Jewish world and turned into something which is actually not meant to be. Once again, I'm not being PC, but I'm being AC. I'm not politically correct, I'm absolutely correct. They've taken this beautiful rite, R-I-T-E, that is right, R-I-G-H-T, and they have turned it into something completely different to what it's meant to be. To such a degree, actually, we run a Bar Mitzvah program here, which I've now done for a few hundred people, actually, and we do it the right way. And it's actually quite apt that this class fell out today, because actually Sunday is my oldest daughter's Bat Mitzvah.
Oh,
Look at that. How about that for timing? Thank you so much. My little girl is out, and she's actually getting married the week after. So there's a yes, thank God. There's a famous story, maybe not so famous, of the Prime Minister of England, who his name was John Major. And he went to a certain mountain range between India and Tibet. And he speaks about how it wasn't so sad to be funny, they had a certain initiation rite for a lot of the boys who had just coincidentally turned 13. And they did a big ceremony, and they invited him to watch this, and he writes about it. And each one of the boys was called up and was presented with their first ever Torah? No. These weren't Jewish kids.
Video game?
No. Tibet and India, no much video games happening over there. Oh. Kalashnikov rifle.
A rifle?
Yeah. And that's what they're presented with. And the message, the parents who so proudly present them with this weaponry on the celebration of their 13th birthday, I won't say Bar Mitzvah, is very telling of a culture and what they're about. So how do we initiate a boy or a girl into adulthood? And that's really what it is. And it's hard to believe it, because nowadays 13, 12, doesn't seem like an adult, does it? You know, there's a reason why that age was actually chosen. We'll see later on this evening. I will say, however, that nowadays, unfortunately, 13 and 12 really isn't so, it's a bit sad, really, isn't it, Most people really start to think for themselves at maybe 35. Right? Most guys you're dating, right? 35 is like they're just starting maybe to hit Bar Mitzvah age. It's just starting to creep on them. Maybe I should get my stuff together, Okay. So what do? We also celebrate, and we also call them up and give them attention and make a party, which is important. I'm not putting it down. Unfortunately, as I always say, it's a joke, but it's pretty sad, that unfortunately the Bar Mitzvah has become more bar than it is mitzvah, okay? Which is a great shame. It should be a celebration. You should have a good time. But we present our daughters with Bibles, with books, give our boys tefillin, and we make it a rite of passage, and it is young, you know. It is young, but it's very, very important, and it shows what we're about. So the Bar Mitzvah, unfortunately, it's been hijacked that it has become the graduation. A lot of Jewish kids in Hebrew school, right? They get the Bar Mitzvah, and we don't see them again. You know, that's the end of it. And that was good. And here's your Siddur, your Chumash from the sisterhood. And thanks for coming. And I'll see you again at your wedding, unless the rabbi's retired, which in most cases they are. Most weddings I do, I'm like, well, where's your, your local rabbi? Like, no, he died years ago. He Bar Mitzvahed me, you know. I came to this country, by the way. Side point. People say to me, yeah, Rabbi, I got involved. And they'll say, but I've been Bar Mitzvahed. I mean, I'm sure you've said it yourselves. And I was very intrigued. I was like, what do you mean, Bar Mitzvahed? Well, I was Bar Mitzvahed. Although, I'm not religious, Rabbi, and I don't go to temple, but I was Bar Mitzvahed. And at first, I used to have like people, no. I said, if you're 12 or 13, if you're over 12? He goes, yes. Are you over 13? Yes. Then you are Bar Mitzvah. And they're like, yeah. But I was actually Bar Mitzvah. So I had this, and I realized, you know what? For some people, it's a passage. Really, it's a time. That's the honest truth. The truth is, you hit 12 as a girl, hit 13 as a boy, and we'll see why the difference in age. But you hit those ages, you're in. You're done. It's an age. It's a moment. One minute you're not, next minute you are. But with that time comes a responsibility. Okay, it's meant to have a build-up of education to that point, but it actually begins at that point. So your Bar Mitzvah is actually the start. We said, look, Torah, Chopra Macedonia. Really, it begins at that point. There's what's meant to happen is a fundamental change. There are physical changes happening in a boy or girl of that age, and that reflects the inner spiritual potential, which is why those ages were chosen. At 12 or 13, although we don't marry our daughters off at 12 or 13, or boys at 13, obviously, that is when the reproductive organs are able to have children. So at that point, the Torah sees a certain change in them that they need to start to think about the responsibility they have to the community. But that's why those ages were chosen. Right? They're not expected to get married at 12. It's not Kabul. Right? However, it begins at that point. Okay? The party is important. Okay? So the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says that a boy who is 13 becomes Bar Mitzvah. And through tradition, right? The Torah doesn't mention it, by the way. Nowhere in the Bible does it mention at 13, thou shalt throw a large party for all your friends, and the young boy shall be given many gifts, and the young girl shall wear makeup. It says it doesn't mention it's Masorah. It's part of our tradition that it's passed down. Now the word's very interesting, BarBat. Now what does the word bar mean? It's actually Aramaic, but it means the son of. Okay, like in Hebrew we say ben, right? Scottish say Mac, right? Of, off, whatever. So it means the son of. And bat, as you know, means a daughter. Bas or a bat is a daughter. So why such strange language? The daughter of mitzvah, right? The son of mitzvah. Just say they're, old enough to be, responsible for their actions and have to start getting involved in Jewish practice. Why wouldn't they? So I have a beautiful thing over here that says that the obligation is automatic, but it's like family. You just fall into it. You don't choose it. Just like you don't choose your parents or your brothers and sisters, you don't choose this. You're opted in. That's the honest truth, which for some people is very difficult to swallow, but comes with a tremendous responsibility. So a son of a mitzvah means you are continuing the chain. It's almost encoded in the words. Right? It's interesting that a person who removes themselves is called a Bal Aveira. They're called the owner of sin. Right? That's the bad translation, but that's really what it means. But a person does the right thing, a BarBat Mitzvah, it's who they are. The owner of something can give up ownership. This you can't give up. Just like a child cannot give up their parents, no matter how much they hate them, they will always be their parents' child. So too, there is a chain And one thing we instill in our children, and if not our children, then ourselves, and God willing, we all have children, and hopefully we'll instill it as well, is that you are the daughter or the son of something that came before you. We're not creating it for the first time. You're not the first, and God willing won't be the last. Could be, unfortunately, but hopefully you're not. So there's a chain of generations that have come before you to reach this point. So even the words BarBat Mitzvah already connotes this idea of family, and you've fallen into this world of responsibility. Yeah. So where does it go back to? So this actually goes back to Mount Sinai. Right? The Jewish people have been doing this for 3,500 years. We've actually been part of this father, mother, child. You know, it's so, you know, we don't put enough emphasis on this, but if you look in the Torah, you'll see that very quickly we move from very abstract discussions of creation of the world, the universe, and everything, to families. See, Jewish history is not like Marxian history, or the history you learned in school or college, which was history of events. Right? The history was events. There was wars, right? And there was like revolutions you learned about. And Jewish history is not like that. Jewish history is history of people and what they do. So very quickly the Torah reflects that by going from creation of the world, the universe, and everything to someone called Noah, so Adam and Eve, right? And then Noah, and then we have Abraham and his wife. We'll talk about kids, and we'll talk about getting married. And you see that the matriarchs are obsessed with having kids. And the reason is because they want to build Jewish families. They don't want to have kids so they can dress them in, you know, Oshkosh Bagosh, right? Or Pishpa, whatever it is, you know, which, you know, we're doing it, which is important. But that's really we're trying to build the continuation of our people, right? As we mentioned last week, to make the world a better place. Part of that, we said, is education, okay? And education is predicated on responsibility. Are we clear on this so far? We're getting somewhere, but we're going somewhere. I know it's deep stuff we're going to do. So we said 12 and 13 is really based upon the physical development. That's why those ages, the Chazal, the rabbis say, they were chosen. Okay? So we coincide this age of responsibility with the reproductive organs. Okay. So I have a question for you. What is better? Somebody who is commanded to do something and does it, or somebody who is not commanded to do something yet does it. Okay? And does it. So both do it. Two people, one was told, you have to do this, and they do it. And the other person who was told, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but does it.
It's a good thing that they do?
Yeah, I'm saying a good thing, yeah. Which one is better? In Hebrew, we call this ha-mitzvah osa ve'eino mitzvah osa. One who's been commanded to do and does, and one who has not been commanded to and does. You have two friends, and you need a favor, and you call them both up. You tell one friend, you've got to do this for me. Right? They're an employee of yours. And you've got to do this for me, and they do it for you. And the other's just a friend, they have to do it for you, and they do it for you voluntarily. Which would you say is doing the better act? Let's talk philosophically. The second one, right? You would have thought the person who is not commanded to do it. So the Talmud actually says, no. We don't actually see it that way. It's a very big, famous question, philosophical question. But the truth is that although the person who is not commanded to do something does it, may have done a very nice thing, we actually see the person who is commanded to do it and meant to do it, doing it as doing the better thing. It's counterintuitive. Before I give you my thoughts on this, why would you think such an individual is doing a better thing? Right?
Your responsibility.
Maybe the volunteer is as well.
It wasn't like a mandated responsibility. You're doing it without question. Self-imposed responsibility.
So questioning is not a good thing? It's tricky, right? It's tricky, right? I mean, the person who does what's being commanded can still question it. We're not saying you can't question why, but you have to do it.
Even if you don't have an answer.
Even if you don't have an answer. That's the key difference, right? You see, responsibility is the key word over here. See, the person who is not commanded to do it is doing it voluntarily, which we always say, oh, such a nice, you're going to pick me up and think, oh, that's such a nice thing to do, right? They're a good friend, right? But let's say they don't want to do it. They won't do it. It's purely coming from a self-motivated, which is very nice, but self-motivated desire, right, to actually get that thing done. And we all want friends like that. However, in Judaism, we say that's a good thing, but the person who's commanded to do it, it comes with a responsibility. The struggle they go through, even though they've been commanded, is still there, but they're still doing it. There's a struggle in person one that person two does not have, because person two is voluntarily doing it. So there's less of a struggle, because they've stepped up. Person one has not stepped up. So they've gone through some kind of inner turmoil, we assume, unless they're robots, and we Jews are not into robots. Okay? I'm being very serious. They've gone through something that they've said, I'm going to do it, even though they're told to do it. Can you hear the difference? You see, at 13 years old, a child is told, or a 12-year-old for a girl, now you got to do it. Now that child still struggles with that. No one just does it. We all struggle. But if you give them the choice, if you want to, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. You've taken away their struggle. You've made it purely an altruistic act on their part. If they want to, they can. So part of it is responsibility. You know what? You've got to do it. Right? Mum and Dad clean the house. You've got to, I don't know, sweep up. Right? You've got to do your homework now. I mean, homework's a good example. Right? Kids don't want to do homework, but they have to do it. So who's better than the one who says, oh, I'll do my homework. I love doing homework. Right? Which is a good thing. Unusual, but a good thing. The first kid, however, is like, I have to do it. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Is at a higher level. It's counterintuitive. That's a very Jewish idea. A very Jewish idea. That's the essence of what a child has to be and what an elder has to be as well. This is what I'm meant to do. It's a struggle for me. I've got to do it. I'm going to fail. I'm going to fall. I'll get up again. But if you don't make me have to do it, then there's no point in me even doing it. What's the point? There's got to be a certain amount of responsibility that goes with it, such that the mitzvah oath, when it's commanded to do it, is considered greater. Children at that young, tender age are obligated to do it. That does not mean we beat them if they don't do it, heaven forbid. That don't mean put a gun to their head. But they need to know that this is your responsibility. Now, you get a short window of time to impart that information, and it's really, really difficult. Because you want them to love it, but they have to do it. I mean, you want them to love doing their homework and learning, whatever it is, good things, but they still got to do it. You've got to want to get married, but you have to get married. And if we make it all voluntarily, then maybe it won't be a while, but it'll be in my time. And you've got to go to synagogue. Right? Even if it's Yom Kippur, I don't know what it is, but you've got to go, but I've got to feel it. Like, it's good if you feel it, and we wanted to feel it, but you've got to do it. And if you get through that struggle, you're doing a great thing. Greater the one who says, I'll do it, me, 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 me. And that's what we do to our kids. It's unbelievable. And unfortunately, we live in a world where we don't want to do that to our kids. We're like, whatever you want to do, it's all good. Do you feel it's okay? And you know what? Kids don't want that. And they fight you. And they'll say, I don't want to do it. And they'll push back. But you've got to push them. You have to inspire them. And you've got to lead by example. You can't expect your kids to become BarBat Mitzvah unless you yourself embrace that reality as well. In your own way. But they've got to see it. Kids are very smart. They really are. And they pick up things at a very young age. And they ask you very embarrassing, difficult questions. Like, so I got to do this, but you don't, you know. Oh, they get it. They get it. So they need to see in their parents, and many, many parents, by the way, I've seen when their kids come BarBat Mitzvah, they start to actually get involved themselves. Because they feel the hypocritical. How can they send their kids off, to some, school, just go learn your thing, come back, I will mention, since we're discussing Bar Mitzvah tonight, the beginning of the obligation, it's a custom to have the kid read the Torah. I was expected, I know my friends did this, I wanted to do it as well, to read the entire Torah portion from the Torah scroll on a Saturday morning. Complete nightmare. Happens to be the skill I got from it. I'm very grateful for them able to read the Torah, because I can teach kids myself now, but it was an absolute nightmare. That's a custom. If that does not go hand in hand with a love of learning and a preparation and appreciation, then you're doing more bad than good. Better to have them do a project, go to classes with a rabbi or a rebbitzin they like, and that will do a lot more for their Jewish future. There's a book, a very old book, which was out of print for many years, but I would call Jews for Nothing. He has a whole chapter there called the Bar Mitzvah dollar theory or something. How Bar Mitzvah, most people have just become the party. Right? That's what I mean by hijacked. It's just about the party. It is a mitzvah to celebrate Bar Mitzvah. Interestingly enough, one of the commentators I read says something fascinating. He says, actually, birthdays we celebrate. But, and it's not a bad thing, a birthday actually is a bit of a celebration. It's not, I don't mean to go out and get completely wasted, but the idea of celebrating a birthday, but if you think about it, it's pretty depressing, which most people get as well. Probably why they get drunk on their birthday, right? It's a pretty depressing thing because, I don't want to say it, but you're 1 year closer to death. I'm sorry that I don't want to break the news to you, but however, a bar mitzvah you do celebrate because it's not just a birthday, right? It's meant to be the beginning of this child's spiritual life, right? They're commanded and responsible for, okay? Let's get a little bit deep. There is a spiritual change that happens in children. They say that Jacob and Esau were identical in actions. You never knew, Jacob, the twin brothers, right? Jacob, right? Isaac's sons, right? Mm-hmm. So Esau became a terrible person, and Jacob became a great righteous person. It wasn't meant to be that way. Esau had a very powerful spiritual mission that he was meant to fulfill. He was actually meant to marry someone called Leah, who had a younger sister called Rachel, who was meant to marry Jacob. So people used to say, 2 brothers for 2 sisters. That was like the given. Esau gave up. He missed his beshert. He missed his zivug, his soulmate, right, deliberately. So Jacob had to marry her as well. Right? Now, you should know that marrying 2 sisters is completely forbidden in the Torah. Right? This was before the Torah was given, so it was permitted in that circumstance. The Torah hadn't been given yet. But that was plan B. Plan A was his older brother, Esau, was meant to marry the older sister, and he was married, but Jacob ended up doing it himself. Okay? I mentioned this whole story because it's interesting, but also the difference between them became evident at 13, they say. You see, up to that point, you couldn't tell which one was good or bad, They're both troublemakers, right? Kids, they're disgusting little creatures, We love them, but, they're just gooey, sticky little But when they hit 13, suddenly they said that's when the separation happened. You see, up to that point, I'll read you actually the words of Rabbi Eliyahu Kitov, and he writes that, I'll just read it for you because it's so much better. God decreed that before 13 years old for a boy and 12 for a girl, the evil inclination would be solely in charge. Kids act selfishly, right? It's anything good they do is because you've managed to somehow miraculously impart this desire. But so they're considered to be, even if they do good things, I'm not saying all kids are bad and evil, but there's certain evil inclination that overcomes them, okay? whether or not the child does good or bad. It all stems from his own desire and natural inclination, for the good inclination is not developed. A person's desires that awaken of their own accord, that are not prompted by the eternal battle of will, even if such desires are to do good, nevertheless they stem from the evil inclination. The good inclination, in the language of our sages, only refers to the fact that a person subdue his natural tendency. That begins at 13. The real struggle inside a child begins at 13 for a boy and 12 for a girl. They may not see it or sense it, but we celebrate it. Isn't that wild? We celebrate this battle that they now have a chance of winning. Beforehand, it's completely impossible. They just literally, you push, they do, or you push, they don't do. It's at 13 for a boy and 12 for a girl, that's when they start to formulate ideas of their own. And now I have a 12-year-old, I can tell you. And they really start to take on a world perspective of their own. And you better have prepared them from day one. There's a famous story of Rabbi Hirsch, a great German commentator, who lived in Frankfurt on Main, who said that a woman walked in and she said, I'd like to know when to start really educating my child in Judaism. And he said, well, how old is your daughter? And said, she's 4. He said, you're 4 years too late. It starts at day one. Everything we do from day one to the end, you're going to mess up. Don't worry about it. I'm just warning you, right? It's weird. But everything you do up to that point is preparing them, because at 12, they start to formulate their own, now they're still your kids, but that's when their world opinion starts to create. Right? That's when the inner struggle really begins, you see, which is reflective, he says, of the physical changes in the body. They mirror each other. One is a metaphor for the other, is really what's happening over there. Okay.
When is that quote from?
Rabbi Eliyahu Kitov, I think it's a couple hundred years ago. I know one of my rabbis actually translated his work, I think 100 years ago. He wrote a very good book, it's in English, called The Book of Our Heritage, that goes through the entire year, all the different holidays and ideas.
It sounds like John Locke with the evil inclination.
Right. The evil inclination, that's not his thinking.
No.
That precedes him by thousands of years. The Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Ra goes right back to the beginning of mankind. The story of Adam and Eve is really a discussion on that. And the snake represents the evil inclination, which at that point was external and could be viewed. And after their sin, by eating from the tree of knowledge, entered inside them and wasn't so much black and white, it was now a gray area, which we are still suffering through at this point. Okay. So the celebration itself. So there is a mitzvah to celebrate that day with a party. And the Zohar says that that's the Kabbalistic work, says that on that day of Bar Mitzvah, a righteous person should rejoice in their heart, almost the degree of a wedding. It should be a very joyous day. I went to a Bat Mitzvah of a very, very nice man, actually. Someone who, I'm very close to. And he did a Bat Mitzvah for his daughter. And I would say this thing cost $500,000.
And did they serve, was the food good?
This was it was actually completely kosher. The food was exceptional. Like absolutely. Well, it's not just that, it's everything else that goes into it. And
I went to one where there was twin girls, and they came out on elephants. Actually,
I came
elephants.
out of an elephant.
Like they entered
You
into
did?
the party.
oh, stop it. South Africa, you never know. Like maybe that's how everyone got there. They parked the elephant outside.
They had two elephants.
Wow. It's I find it hard to criticize other people. When I criticize other people, I end up doing it myself. So I just want to.
Here is your daughter coming.
My daughter's my daughter.
Plan.
She's coming out very simple on a donkey, just like any normal girl her age. Okay.
Did you ever see Keeping Up with the Signs?
Yeah, that's a good movie.
That's what the movie's about. It's like two families competing for who's having the better wedding.
So this happens to be. I haven't seen it. I haven't heard the movie, but this idea of the competing thing is it's actually another topic which I should really cover as well, which is this idea of keeping up with the Coens, or the Goldbergs. is a major part of it. Who your kids this actually relates to who your kids mix with will be the bar mitzvah they want. My bar mitzvah.
So what's yours?
My bar mitzvah when I grew up was hundreds of people. Well, Star Wars more was a big thing, obviously, for my parents. And they got a soccer player who was the captain. That means the captain, right? Of one of the biggest soccer teams in England, like the equivalent of the Yankees to come to my bar mitzvah. Well, I'm not gonna lie, it was fantastic. I'm not gonna say it was,
How'd they do that?
They paid him, and they had some contact. I don't know. I was 13. It was a surprise. I actually have my bar mitzvah video, which I need to. It's on video. It's a big. If you have a video player, it's like a big plastic. The VHS. Remember those things? Yeah. So, yeah, thank you. Great. I don't feel old. I'm gonna have to put it onto. Oh, I did. I have it on DVD.
You want to show it to us?
I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna bring it in next week. I'm gonna bring it next week. I've not shown it to anyone. I'm there with my big red bow tie, the big glasses, a lot of hair on those days, a lot of hair, big fan hair. I look fantastic. Terrifying. Yeah, it was 1985.
So the guy that came for the whole party, or was it like a drunk? He just walked in?
No, he just walked in. It was part of the shtick, which is like standard practice over here.
So who's going to be at your daughter's? Yeah, what's your daughter's? What
My
are you
daughter.
guys doing?
Miley Cyrus.
Beckham?
Actually, something crazy. You're gonna think this is absolutely nuts.
Or are you just
You ready for this?
luncheon?
Yeah, that's not the crazy part.
Okay.
The crazy part is, we're doing like a little luncheon, a small thing, is that the school my kids go to have rules.
Oh.
There's a certain amount you can do, certain amount you can spend, certain amount you can, certain amount of people. It happens to be because there's a lot of rich kids in our school. She goes to a massive school, going to school. There's very wealthy families, and they can only do it in this place, and you have to actually submit
Oh my
the
goodness.
actions happening over there, and they take full control. Which is, for my wife and I, we could try to, but there's rule. And I say something, I appreciate it because my daughter's going to see these other very fancy parties, so I want that as well. But those parties don't exist. They're all pretty monolithic, and you basically have a girl who, is making jewelry with them a little bit, and she has a little dress which we rented for her, and it's actually in the hall of my synagogue. And you cannot even have an advanced jewel. It can either be in the hall of your synagogue, I think, or in your home. They make very strict rules. I didn't grow up like this, but that is the way. It's very interesting, right? And it may sound difficult, but everyone does it that way.
What if you break the rules?
People don't break the rules. They're part of the school. They don't break the rules, So, hey, rules there to be broken. What's up with that? You know what I'm saying? But if part of the school, this is what you do. I mean, people may argue with it. Oh, yes. Yeah. And that's what they do it. I'm not saying this is for everyone, but this is where we send our kids. And there's actually, you have to sign a thing, you have to submit it, and I'm not having any more than this and more of that. But they were actually they tried in my area, my community, to do it with weddings. That was much harder. They actually tried to do it with weddings, which I'm not discussing right now, but the idea is good. They actually put stipulations down. You're actually not meant to have more than a certain amount of piece band, not to have more than a certain amount of guests. And
You have a big family.
so family is one thing, but most people who come to these weddings are friends, family's family, and you can't, they're like cakes, and they made very strict rules, and some people abide by it. They found it was getting out of control. They're trying to answer a problem. People were spending more than they had, and people going into debt, which is just ridiculous. I mean, the party of my parents was great, and I love my parents for doing it. I have wonderful, wonderful parents. But you know what? Had they taken that money, right, that's right, that's right. Had they put that money into a bank, I could use it now. I didn't need it then. I was 13. What, buy a stereo, buy an Atari? What was I?
You would have had nothing to talk to us about.
Exactly. I wouldn't even have a...
Soccer player.
Steve Perryman was his name.
So what's considered the amount you're supposed to celebrate for Bar Mitzvah? Not too much?
Listen, I don't know the exact amount, the caterers you have, but it's a certain range.
Not extravagant.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Is this common practice in a lot of religious
Truthfully, I don't know. I went to yeshiva great my entire life. We never had such a thing. There was guys, and they've controlled it. So I don't have my daughter coming back saying, "How come she had this and I don't have this?" It happens to be really.
It's great.
Sure, we do.
I went to an Orthodox school, and none of the girls had Bat Mitzvahs.
Listen, I tell you, they may not get called up to the Torah and do that kind of stuff but I'm writing a check. Anyway, I've got a party coming, and hoping for bigger checks to come in. By the way, it's all about the investment. I'm also trying to figure out that 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, so they make the stipulations, and I truthfully, I find it rather gratifying. I don't have to deal with it, But that's a choice. And the people just like you, when you get married, talking about the wedding class, which is a lot more important actually. People, the families you connect with, and we just moved recently to a new home, to a new area, and a major part of that was who the kids are, because your friends as a kid become who you are, So we chose an area which we try our best, nothing's perfect. And maybe look at our kids, they're crazy, I don't know. So maybe it's, But who are you surrounding yourself, and who are your kids for us? Before we moved to this area, I called my rabbi. I have a rabbi. I have a few. And Rabbi Rakowski, a very wise person who has 14 children himself, God bless him. He's a great grandfather himself. A very wise person. Very funny person. And I got rabbinic ordination from him, his yeshiva. And we had a serious discussion. One moved to this area. He wants to know the names of the families, who the people were. Rabbi said the other. And he said, yeah, you can live over there. Actually, before I moved... What time is it? Oh, I've got to stop soon. Thanks. So before I moved to this particular area, we moved to the area I was before. I remember calling up my rabbi and describing the house and the price for it. And it was a very good price, a very good house. And he says, absolutely not. There's no young kids around there. He says a couple of families are not enough, he said. He said, you'll pay another, I think it was $40,000 more for a smaller house, which was like a mile down the road in this, my area, And the decision was based upon the kids. Right? The kids really, really follow the parents, but their friends are a major, major influence. I'm actually rereading the book Tipping Point. A great book. I do like it a lot. I like his writings a lot. And he has a whole thing there on smoking and stickiness. Why do kids smoke? And he goes through every single possibility of why kids will smoke. What is the is that? And in the end, the conclusion is it's the cool thing to do, and it's their peers. That's like one of his conclusions of it. Really, it's just a cool thing to do. Who your kids surround themselves with, who it is, who they become. It's a major, major thing, and it starts very, very young. So, okay, so very joyous day. It should be celebrated. I'm not saying no party. And if your community has fancy parties, that's good. But you've got to combine it with the idea of the responsibility. We actually run Bar Mitzvahs for families, for their kids, guys and girls. And Faggy learns with his kids, which, by the way, transforms these girls. I mean, really, I've seen the results of it. And we make them learn, not just read, but learn. And by the way, for my Bar Mitzvah, I do for adults. There's a Bar Mitzvah program over here. And they're like, well, I'd have to read it. I'm like, what's the point? I don't understand it. Why would you read it? Well, let's learn. And as I sit down with each one of them, that girl I was sitting down with this evening was actually a Bar Mitzvah girl. And we actually went through her Torah portion and studied it together. And she's going to write an essay on it, doing research and a paper. And she's going to give a speech about it. See? Is that right? That's right. It was nice, no? It engages you in the... You don't come out an expert, but I was 13. I came out an expert. So I was like reading words. What the heck I was reading? I don't know what I'm looking at. You grew up speaking Hebrew? No. Learning. Hearing it from my family a little bit. No, I didn't. No.
I had my Bat Mitzvah here was like the 17-year anniversary of my original Bat Mitzvah.
I remember that. Okay, that was pretty much what I wanted to share with you.